She charged parents $20,000 for stolen exam answers. To cover her tracks, she hacked my email and faked hundreds of messages, framing me as the perfect scapegoat. 25 years of my career were destroyed by a single lie. Thousands of dollars were wasted on lawyers. I am holding the evidence that would put her in prison right now. Before we continue and find out how it all began, please subscribe and leave a like. We'd truly love to read your comments below of someone who feared eye contact. 25 years I had worked at Ashford Academy. 25 years of teaching calculus to children whose parents paid $50,000 a year for the privilege of my instruction. And now this. The board has received serious allegations, Gregory said, his voice thin and apologetic. He was 53, but looked older in the fluorescent light filtering through his window. We have to investigate. You understand. I understood perfectly. Someone had accused me of helping students cheat on college entrance exams, the kind of accusation that ended careers in institutions like Ashford. What exactly am I accused of? I asked. My voice came out level, calm. I had learned long ago that women who showed anger were dismissed as emotional. Women who showed fear were dismissed as guilty. Gregory shuffled the papers again. A parent came forward with concerns about test score patterns, inconsistencies in student performance. The board hired an outside consultant to review the data. Test score patterns. I had spent my entire career teaching students to think mathematically, to see patterns in chaos. And now someone was using patterns to destroy me. Who made the complaint? I asked. I can't disclose that. Not yet. He finally looked at me. His eyes were apologetic but firm. You'll be placed on administrative leave pending the investigation. Full pay. The board will make a decision within 6 weeks. Administrative leave. The phrase sounded neutral, professional, but I knew what it meant. Guilty until proven innocent. Removed from my classroom. Separated from students who needed me. Erased. I've never helped a student cheat, I said quietly. Not once in 25 years. I believe you, Gregory said, but his tone suggested otherwise. The consultant will complete their review and we'll go from there. In the meantime, I need you to surrender your office key and your faculty ID. I placed both items on his desk. The keyring made a small metallic sound against the wood. 25 years reduced to 2 pieces of metal and plastic. Walking through the halls toward the exit, I passed classrooms where my colleagues taught. Through the windows, I could see students bent over notebooks, equations on whiteboards, the ordinary rhythm of a school day continuing without disruption. No one looked at me. No one waved. Word had already spread. I was toxic now, radioactive. Outside, the morning sun felt too bright. I stood on the stone steps where I had stood thousands of times before. Students arriving for class, parents dropping off children, faculty meetings, award ceremonies. All of it familiar. All of it suddenly foreign. My car was parked in the faculty lot. I got in and sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. My hands were steady on the steering wheel, but my mind was racing through scenarios. Who had done this? Why? The answer came faster than I wanted it to. There was only one person who had both motive and access. Diana Marshall, 32 years old, 7 years at Ashford. My junior colleague in the mathematics department, the woman who had been angling for department chair since the day she arrived. I had blocked her promotion last year, not out of malice. Her teaching was adequate, but her methods were questionable. She focused too heavily on test preparation. taught formulas without understanding. The board had agreed with my assessment. Diana had stayed in her position, but she had smiled at me in the faculty lounge the next day and said something I had dismissed at the time. You know, Margaret, eventually someone always finds a way around the gatekeeper. I started the car and drove home. My house in Newton was a colonial with too many rooms for one person. My husband had died 8 years ago. My daughter lived in Seattle with her own family. The house was quiet except for the sounds I made moving through it. I made tea, sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop. The first search result for my name showed nothing unusual. Academic articles I had published, conference presentations, a profile on the Ashford website describing my credentials. But when I added Ashford Academy scandal to the search, everything changed. Someone had leaked the story. A local news site had picked it up. The headline was careful, lawyered. Elite private school investigates test score irregularities. My name was not mentioned, but the article described a senior faculty member under investigation. The comments section was already filling with speculation, parents demanding transparency, former students defending the school, anonymous accounts calling for immediate termination of whoever was responsible. I closed the laptop before I could read more. The doorbell rang. I was not expecting anyone. Through the window, I saw a woman I did not recognize. Professional clothes, serious expression. She held a leather portfolio. I opened the door halfway. Can I help you? Dr. Margaret Sullivan? She offered her hand. I did not take it. I'm Jessica Torres. I'm the consultant hired by Ashford Academy to review the test score data. I was hoping we could talk. I've been placed on leave, I said. I'm not required to speak with you. No, you're not required, Jessica agreed. Her tone was neutral, clinical. But I thought you might want to understand what we've found so far. That caught my attention. What have you found? May I come in? I stepped aside, led her into my kitchen. Offered tea, she declined. Jessica opened her portfolio on my kitchen table. Inside were printouts, spreadsheets, data visualizations, the kind of statistical analysis I had done myself hundreds of times in my career. The board hired me because a parent noticed something unusual. Jessica began. Over the past 3 years, students in your advanced calculus class have shown significantly higher performance on standardized tests than their performance in class would predict. That's not unusual, I said. My job is to prepare them for exactly those tests. I agree. But here's where it gets interesting. She pulled out a graph. The improvement isn't gradual, it's sudden. Students who struggled all semester suddenly score in the top percentile. And it only happens in your classes. I studied the graph. She was right. The pattern was striking. Too striking. Someone is helping them cheat, I said slowly, and framing me for it. Jessica looked at me carefully. That was my first thought, too. But the evidence the board has received suggests you're directly involved. Emails between you and parents, payment records, text messages. I've never sent those emails, I said. I don't know anything about payments or messages. The emails come from your school account, Jessica said. The text from your phone number. The room felt smaller. Someone has access to my accounts. That's possible, Jessica said carefully. But proving it will be difficult. The board needs concrete evidence of fraud, not just your word against the data. She closed her portfolio and stood. "I wanted to give you a chance to explain before I submit my final report. The timeline I've been given is tight. 4 weeks to complete the investigation. And then? And then the board decides whether to terminate your employment or clear you completely." After she left, I sat at my kitchen table until the light changed outside. The sun moved across the floor in patterns I had seen every day for 8 years, but never really noticed. 4 weeks. Someone had spent considerable time and resources building a case against me, creating fake evidence, manipulating data, all to destroy my career and take my position. Diana Marshall had the motive, but did she have the technical skills to pull this off? I opened my laptop again, searched for Diana's academic background: bachelor's degree in mathematics from a state school, master's degree in education. Nothing that suggested advanced knowledge of data manipulation or digital forensics. But her husband worked in finance, technology sector, the kind of work that required understanding of systems and access protocols. I needed proof, not suspicion, not theory, concrete evidence that Diana had orchestrated this. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Dr. Sullivan?" A man's voice, young, nervous. "This is Tyler Chen. I was in your class 2 years ago." I remembered Tyler. Quiet student, strong in geometry, but struggled with calculus. He had graduated and gone to Princeton. "Tyler, how are you?" "I need to tell you something," he said. His voice shook slightly. "About Miss Marshall, about what she did to help me get into Princeton." My chest tightened. "What did she do?" "She offered to tutor me privately, said she could guarantee I'd score high enough on the AP exam to get into an Ivy. She charged my parents $20,000. $20,000. The number hung in the air like smoke. "Did she help you cheat?" I asked. "She gave me copies of the exam questions 3 days before the test. Said she had connections with the testing company. I didn't want to do it, but my parents had already paid, and they were so desperate for me to get into Princeton." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I heard about the investigation, and I know Miss Marshall is blaming you. But it wasn't you. It was her. She's been doing this for years. There are at least 6 other students she helped the same way." "Will you testify to this?" I asked. Silence. Then, "I can't. My parents would lose everything. I'd lose my degree. But I can give you names, other students who might be willing to talk." He gave me 3 names. I wrote them down carefully. "Tyler, thank you for calling." "Dr. Sullivan? I'm sorry. You were always fair to me. You didn't deserve this." After he hung up, I stared at the names on the paper. 3 students, potentially 6 total. All of them connected to Diana Marshall. All of them evidence of systematic fraud. But evidence I could not use without destroying the students themselves. This was Diana's genius. She had built her scheme on the desperation of parents and the vulnerability of students. Everyone involved had too much to lose by coming forward. The conspiracy protected itself through mutual assured destruction. I needed another approach, something that did not require student testimony, something that would prove Diana's guilt without collateral damage. I went upstairs to my office. The room overlooked the backyard where my husband had planted roses that still bloomed every summer without him. His desk was still there. I had kept it exactly as he had left it. Papers, books, a calculator from the 1980s that still worked. I sat at my own desk and pulled up my faculty email account. 25 years of correspondence, thousands of messages. Every interaction with students, parents, and colleagues carefully archived. If someone had gained access to my account to send fraudulent emails, there would be traces, login records, IP addresses, timestamps that did not match my actual activity. I spent 3 hours combing through account settings and security logs. Nothing obvious jumped out, but then I found it. A small detail in the access history. Someone had logged into my account from an IP address I did not recognize, multiple times over the past 2 years, always late at night, always from the same location. I copied the IP address and ran it through a geolocation service. The results came back immediately. The address belonged to a residential building in Cambridge. I pulled up the address in Google Maps. Luxury apartments, high-end, the kind of place that required significant income. Diana Marshall lived in that building. I had been there once for a department gathering. 18th floor, corner unit, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Charles River. My hands were steady now, my mind clear. I had the beginning of proof, not enough yet, but enough to know I was right. Diana had accessed my account from her home. She had sent emails using my credentials. She had built her fraudulent scheme and then framed me for it when the board started asking questions. But why would she risk this? The money was good, but not worth destroying a career over, unless there was more to it than just the tutoring scheme. I pulled up Ashford's financial records. As department chair, I had access to budget documents and grant information. Diana had applied for a research grant last year, $500,000 for developing new mathematics curricula. I had reviewed the application and recommended denial. The proposal was weak, unfocused. The board had agreed with my recommendation. Diana had lost the grant, $500,000. Enough money to justify an elaborate revenge scheme. Enough money to motivate the kind of patient, careful destruction I was experiencing now. I closed my laptop and looked out the window. The sun was setting. The roses glowed in the fading light. Diana Marshall had played this perfectly. She had created a scheme that implicated me while enriching herself. She had built layers of protection through student complicity. She had positioned herself to take my job and my grant opportunities once I was gone. But she had made one mistake. She had assumed I would not fight back, that a woman my age, with my reputation, would accept defeat quietly rather than risk public scandal. She did not know that I had spent 25 years teaching students how to solve impossible problems, how to find patterns in chaos, how to prove theorems that seemed unprovable. She did not know that mathematics was the study of truth, absolute, unassailable truth, and I was very good at my job. I opened a new document on my laptop and began writing. Not a defense, not an explanation, a proof, step by step, premise by premise, building a logical structure that would demonstrate Diana's guilt with the same certainty as a mathematical theorem. I worked through the night. By morning, I had a document 50 pages long, timelines, evidence, data analysis, witness statements from Tyler, and the patterns I had found in the account access logs. It was not complete yet, but it was a foundation. I saved the file to 3 different locations: cloud storage, external drive, email draft. Then I made coffee and waited for morning. At 8 o'clock, I called Jessica Torres. She answered on the second ring. "I have information you need to see," I told her. "Information about who's really behind the cheating scheme." "Dr. Sullivan, I can't discuss the investigation with you." "I'm not asking you to discuss it. I'm asking you to look at evidence. Independently verify what I've found. If I'm wrong, you can ignore it. If I'm right, you'll have the truth." Silence on the line? Then send me what you have. I'll review it. No promises. I hung up and sent the file. Then I made breakfast. I did not eat and waited. The call came 6 hours later. Dr. Sullivan? Jessica's voice was different now. Sharp, focused. I need to meet with you and the board. Tomorrow morning. Can you be at the school at 9? Yes. Bring copies of everything you sent me. And, Dr. Sullivan, you might want to bring a lawyer. I called the lawyer I had used when my husband died. Estate planning. Wills. He recommended someone who specialized in employment law. I called her, explained the situation. She agreed to meet me at Ashford the next morning. That night, I did not sleep. I reviewed my proof again and again, looking for holes, finding none. The mathematics was clear. The pattern undeniable. Diana Marshall had committed fraud. She had framed me to cover her tracks, and I could prove it. Not with emotional appeals, not with character witnesses, with data, with logic, with the same rigorous methodology I had taught for a quarter century. At 8:30 the next morning, I walked into Ashford Academy with my lawyer beside me. Gregory Whitmore met us in the lobby. His face was pale. "The board is waiting," he said. We followed him to the conference room on the 3rd floor. 8 board members sat around a long table. Jessica Torres stood at the head of the room with a laptop and projector. Diana Marshall sat near the window, her expression carefully neutral. When she saw me, something flickered across her face. Not guilt, not fear, annoyance, as if my presence was an inconvenience rather than a threat. I took my seat. My lawyer sat beside me. I placed my folder of evidence on the table in front of me. "Thank you for coming, Dr. Sullivan," said the board chair, a man named Robert Chen, Tyler's father. I kept my face neutral. "We've asked you here because new information has come to light." Jessica Torres opened her laptop. "What Dr. Sullivan sent me yesterday changes everything." The emails that appeared to come from her account were actually sent from an IP address registered to Diana Marshall's residence. Diana leaned forward. "That's impossible. I would never. I've verified the login records independently," Jessica continued, cutting her off. "Someone using Dr. Marshall's internet connection accessed Dr. Sullivan's email account 23 times over 2 years. The timing correlates exactly with the dates of the fraudulent communications." The board members looked at Diana. She looked back, her face flushing. "This is insane," Diana said. "Why would I frame Dr. Sullivan? What possible motive?" $500,000, I said quietly. The room went silent. "You applied for a research grant last year," I continued, my voice steady, clinical. "I recommended denial. The board agreed with my recommendation. The money would have secured your position, funded your research, given you leverage to become department chair." Diana's jaw tightened. "That has nothing to do with this." "Actually, it has everything to do with this." Jessica pulled up another slide. "Dr. Marshall, you've been operating a private tutoring business for 3 years. You've accepted payments from at least 8 families, amounts ranging from $15,000 to $30,000. In exchange, you provided students with copies of standardized exam questions." "That's slander," Diana said, but her voice had lost its confidence. "It's documented fact," Jessica replied. "I have bank records showing deposits that match the timeline of students' exam dates. I have testimony from one student willing to go on record, and I have statistical evidence showing impossibly high score improvements that correlate exactly with your involvement." Robert Chen stood up. His face was carved from stone. My son was one of those students. Diana went very still. Tyler called me last night, Robert continued. He told me everything. What you did. What you charged us. How you threatened his future if he didn't cooperate. Mr. Chen, I never threatened. You're done, Robert said. His voice was absolutely cold, not just at this school. I sit on the boards of 4 other private schools in Massachusetts. You'll never teach in this state again. Diana looked around the room, at the board members, at Gregory Whitmore, at me. Her carefully constructed mask was cracking. Underneath was something raw and desperate. You don't understand, she said to me. I needed that grant. I'm drowning in debt from my education. The school pays nothing. I had to do something. You had to destroy someone innocent? I asked. My voice was still level, still calm, but underneath, something was burning. You had to frame me for your crimes? You blocked my promotion. You blocked my grant. You acted like you were better than me because you've been here longer, because you're some legend. But you're just old, irrelevant. The word hung in the air. Old. She had reduced 25 years of excellence to a single dismissal. I'm 51, I said quietly. Not dead. Not irrelevant. Not gone. Gregory Whitmore cleared his throat. Ms. Marshall, you're terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal items. Diana stood. For a moment, I thought she might cry, but instead she laughed, a short, bitter sound. You think this is over? You think you've won? Even if I'm gone, everyone will always wonder if you were really innocent. There'll always be doubt. That's what I've given you, Margaret. Permanent doubt. No, Robert Chen said. What you've given her is vindication. The board will issue a public statement clearing Dr. Sullivan completely. We'll make it very clear that you, and you alone, were responsible for this fraud. Diana left without another word. 2 security guards followed her out. After the door closed, the room was silent. I sat very still, my hands folded on the table in front of me. Dr. Sullivan, Robert Chen said. His voice was gentler now. On behalf of the board, I apologize. We should have investigated more thoroughly before placing you on leave. We should have trusted your record. I nodded, did not trust myself to speak. We'd like to reinstate you immediately, he continued, with back pay for the time you missed, and we'd like to discuss a raise. Your loyalty to this institution, even under these circumstances, deserves recognition. Thank you, I managed to say. The meeting ended. Board members filed out, several of them stopping to shake my hand or pat my shoulder. Gregory Whitmore apologized again, promised to do better. My lawyer gathered her papers. That went better than I expected, she said. Congratulations. After everyone left, I sat alone in the conference room. The morning sun came through the windows, casting squares of light across the long table. I should feel triumphant, vindicated, victorious. Instead, I felt tired and sad and old in a way that had nothing to do with my age. Diana was right about one thing. There would always be doubt. Students who had heard the rumors, parents who had wondered, colleagues who had avoided me during the investigation. They would remember the scandal, not the resolution, but I would remember something else. I would remember that when someone tried to destroy me with lies, I fought back with truth. I used the skills I had spent my life developing. I proved what could not be denied, and that was worth something. It had to be worth something. I left the conference room and walked through the empty halls of Ashford Academy. Classes were in session. Through the windows, I could see students working, equations on whiteboards, the ordinary magic of teaching and learning. My classroom was on the second floor. The door was locked, but I still had my key. I had never surrendered it. Gregory had forgotten to take it back. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Everything was exactly as I had left it 3 weeks ago. Student work on the bulletin board, textbooks stacked on my desk, the periodic table of mathematical functions I had created hanging on the back wall. I sat at my desk and looked at the empty chairs. 25 students usually filled those chairs. 25 minds learning to think differently, learning to see patterns, learning that problems always had solutions if you were patient enough to find them. Diana had tried to steal this from me. This room, these students, this life I had built with care and dedication. She had failed, but the attempt had left scars, the kind that would not show on the surface, but would ache on cold days, doubt that would creep in during quiet moments, the knowledge that someone had hated me enough to try to destroy me. I pulled out my phone and called my daughter in Seattle. "Mom?" Sarah answered on the first ring. "Is everything okay?" "Yes," I said. "Everything's okay now. The board cleared me. I'm going back to work." Oh, thank God. Her relief was palpable. I've been so worried. I wanted to fly out, but I didn't want to make it worse. "It's over," I told her. "It's really over." We talked for 20 minutes about her children, about her job, about ordinary things that felt extraordinary after 3 weeks of chaos. After we hung up, I sat in my empty classroom and let myself cry. Not from sadness, not from relief, from exhaustion, from the weight of having survived something that should have destroyed me. Then I wiped my face and stood up. There was work to do. Lesson plans to update, students to prepare for, a career to rebuild. I gathered my things and locked the classroom door behind me. Walking out of Ashford Academy that afternoon, I passed Diana's classroom. Oh, someone had already removed her name from the door. The room was empty, dark, erased. That was the difference between us. Diana had built her career on lies that collapsed under scrutiny. I had built mine on truth that withstood examination. She was gone. I remained, and that, in the end, was justice. 2 months passed before I understood that vindication and victory were not the same thing. The board had cleared my name. Diana was gone. I was back in my classroom, teaching calculus to students who pretended not to have heard the rumors. But something had shifted in the foundation of my life at Ashford, like a hairline fracture in load-bearing concrete. The first faculty meeting after my return was held in the main conference room on a Tuesday afternoon in May. 14 colleagues sat around the table. Most of them had worked with me for years. Some had sent supportive emails during my leave. Others had said nothing at all. Now they avoided my eyes as Gregory Whitmore discussed curriculum changes for the fall semester. "Dr. Sullivan," Gregory said, halfway through the meeting, "we'd like your input on the new AP Calculus guidelines." Every head turned toward me. The attention felt sharp, clinical, like I was a specimen under glass rather than a colleague at the table. "The guidelines look reasonable," I said. My voice came out steady, professional. "I'd recommend we pilot the new format with one section next year before rolling it out completely." Gregory nodded and moved on to the next agenda item. No one else spoke to me for the rest of the meeting. When it ended, people gathered their papers and left in clusters of 2 and 3. conversations that stopped when I approached, laughter that died when I entered a room. I had been exonerated, but I had not been forgiven for being accused. Walking back to my classroom, I passed Jennifer Walsh in the hallway. She taught English literature and had been at Ashford almost as long as I had. We had served on curriculum committees together, attended the same faculty dinners, shared complaints about administration over coffee in the lounge. "Jennifer," I said. She looked up from her phone. Her smile was automatic, distant. "Margaret, good to see you back." "Is it?" The question came out before I could stop it. Jennifer's smile faltered. Of course, we all knew the allegations were false, but she was already moving past me, already putting distance between us, already treating me like something contagious that might spread if she got too close. I continued to my classroom and closed the door behind me. My students arrived 10 minutes later, 17 of them. Juniors and seniors preparing for college entrance exams. They filed in quietly and took their seats. No one met my eyes. I picked up a piece of chalk and turned to the whiteboard. "Today we're reviewing integration by parts," I said. "Open your textbooks to page 247. The lesson proceeded normally. I worked through examples. Students took notes. Hands went up with questions. But underneath the ordinary rhythm of teaching, I felt the weight of what wasn't being said, the rumors they had heard, the doubts they harbored, the knowledge that their teacher had been accused of corruption, even if the accusations had been proven false. After class, a student named Emma Chen approached my desk. She was Robert Chen's daughter, Tyler's younger sister, a brilliant mathematician who struggled with self-confidence. "Dr. Sullivan?" Her voice was soft, uncertain. "I wanted to say I'm sorry about what my brother did, about what Ms. Marshall did to him." I set down the papers I had been organizing. "You have nothing to apologize for, Emma. But if Tyler had come forward sooner, you wouldn't have gone through all that. He told me he knew what Ms. Marshall was doing, but he was too scared to say anything." Emma's eyes were bright with tears she was fighting to contain. "He feels terrible about it." "Your brother did come forward," I said gently, "when it mattered. That took courage. But everyone still thinks you might have been involved. I hear them talking, other students, some of the teachers. They say maybe you were working with Ms. Marshall and just didn't get caught." The words hit like a physical blow. I kept my face neutral, calm. "What do you think, Emma?" She looked at me directly for the first time. "I think you're the best teacher I've ever had. I think Ms. Marshall was a liar, and I think people are idiots." A small laugh escaped me. Unexpected. "Thank you for that." Emma nodded and left. I sat at my desk until the building grew quiet, until the sounds of other teachers leaving filtered through my closed door, until the sun moved across the floor in patterns that reminded me I was still here, still teaching, still fighting to prove something I had already proven. That evening, I drove home through rush hour traffic. My house waited for me the way it always did. Empty, quiet, filled with the accumulated objects of a life I had built with someone who was no longer here to share it. I made dinner for one, ate it standing at the kitchen counter, washed the single plate and fork and put them away. My laptop sat on the kitchen table where I had left it that morning. I opened it and checked my email. 3 messages from students with questions about homework. 1 from the school administration about updated parking policies. Nothing personal. Nothing that suggested I had colleagues who considered me a friend rather than a liability. I closed the laptop and walked upstairs to my office. The window overlooked the backyard where roses were beginning to bloom, pink and white and deep red. My husband had planted them the year before he died. He had said they would outlast both of us. He had been right about that at least. I sat at my desk and pulled out the folder I had been avoiding for 2 months. Inside were newspaper clippings about the scandal, screenshots of social media posts, comments from parents demanding answers, articles about Diana's arrest and the investigation into her tutoring scheme. Some of the articles mentioned me by name. Dr. Margaret Sullivan, who was initially suspected of involvement in the cheating scheme, was later cleared of all wrongdoing. The word initially felt like a scar that would never fully heal. I had been suspected. That fact would follow me forever, regardless of how thoroughly I had been exonerated. I closed the folder and placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk. Out of sight, but not forgotten. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah in Seattle. "How was your day? Are people being decent to you?" I typed back a lie. "Everything's fine. People are adjusting. It takes time." The truth was more complicated. People weren't adjusting. They were avoiding, creating distance, protecting themselves from association with someone who had been tainted by accusation, even if the accusations had been false. Sarah responded immediately. "I can fly out this weekend if you need company. Just say the word." I smiled at the screen. My daughter had inherited her father's kindness and his inability to hide concern. "I'm okay, really. Focus on your family. I'll visit in July." Another lie. I wasn't okay, but I also didn't need my daughter to witness how thoroughly my colleagues had erased me from their social circles. I set the phone down and looked around my office. Books on mathematics lined the shelves. Awards and certificates hung on the walls. Photos of students who had gone on to study at MIT and Harvard and Stanford. Evidence of a career built on excellence and integrity. None of it mattered anymore. I had been accused, and that fact had rewritten the story of who I was in the minds of everyone at Ashford. The next morning, I arrived at school early. The parking lot was nearly empty. I walked through the quiet hallways to my classroom and unlocked the door. Inside, someone had left an envelope on my desk. Plain white. No name or return address. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 3 words printed in block letters. "We know truth." My hands didn't shake as I read it. Didn't tremble as I turned the paper over looking for more information. The envelope had been hand-delivered. Someone had entered my classroom after I had left yesterday. Someone had left this message. I photographed the note and envelope with my phone. Then I placed both items in my desk drawer and locked it. Whoever had left this message wanted me to feel threatened. Wanted me to understand that vindication from the board didn't mean vindication in the court of public opinion. The door opened. Gregory Whitmore stepped inside. His expression was apologetic in the way it had been since my return, perpetually sorry without ever quite apologizing. "Margaret, do you have a minute?" "Of course." I gestured to the chair beside my desk. He sat but didn't relax. "The board has asked me to discuss something with you. It's delicate." My chest tightened. "What is it?" "Several parents have expressed concerns about their children being in your classes next year. They're not saying you did anything wrong. They're just uncomfortable with the association given everything that happened." The words were careful, diplomatic, cowardly. "You're asking me to step down?" No. Gregory leaned forward. We're asking you to consider teaching a reduced course load next year. Maybe focus on juniors instead of seniors. Let some of the college prep work go to other teachers in the department. Translation: we want you visible enough that we can be accused of forcing you out, but invisible enough that parents don't complain. And if I refuse? Gregory's face tightened. Then we'll have to consider what's best for the school community as a whole. I don't want to do that, Margaret. You're an excellent teacher, but the board is under pressure from parents who donate significant amounts of money to this institution. Money. It always came down to money. Parents who paid $50,000 a year expected their concerns to be taken seriously, even when those concerns were based on rumors and innuendo, rather than facts. I'll think about it, I said. Gregory stood. Thank you for understanding. I know this isn't easy. He left before I could respond. Not easy. The phrase was laughable. Nothing about the past 3 months had been easy. I taught my morning classes on autopilot, derivatives, integrals, the fundamental theorem of calculus. Students took notes, asked questions, left when the bell rang. The ordinary machinery of education continuing regardless of the chaos underneath. During lunch period, I sat in my classroom rather than going to the faculty lounge. I had learned that lesson quickly. The conversations that died when I approached, the tables that suddenly filled when I looked for a place to sit. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. Dr. Sullivan? A woman's voice. Professional? Unfamiliar? This is Rachel Morrison from the Boston Globe. I'm writing a follow-up piece on the Ashford Academy cheating scandal, and I'd love to get your perspective. My grip tightened on the phone. I have nothing to say to the press. I understand you were cleared of all charges. That's a significant part of the story. Don't you want people to know your side? People who matter already know my side. But there are questions about how the investigation was conducted, about whether the school protected you because of your tenure. Wouldn't you like to address those concerns? The implication was clear. She wasn't interested in clearing my name. She was interested in creating doubt, in suggesting that maybe the investigation had been insufficient, that maybe there were still unanswered questions. I'm hanging up now, I said. Wait, just one question. How do you respond to allegations that you knew about Diana Marshall's operation and chose not to report it? Rage flooded through me, cold and sharp and clarifying. I respond by saying, you should check your sources before you slander someone. Diana Marshall acted alone. That's been proven conclusively. And if you print anything suggesting otherwise, you'll be hearing from my lawyer. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking now. Finally, after months of keeping myself under control, after maintaining perfect composure through accusations and investigations and the slow erasure of my professional reputation, my hands were shaking because a reporter had just suggested I had been complicit in corruption despite every piece of evidence proving otherwise. I set the phone down and pressed my palms flat against my desk, counted to 10, then 20, then 50. The door opened. Jennifer Walsh stood in the doorway. Margaret, are you okay? I was walking past and I heard you on the phone. I'm fine. The words came out harsh, defensive. Jennifer stepped inside and closed the door behind her. That didn't sound fine. A reporter just accused me of covering up Diana's crimes, so no, Jennifer, I'm not fine. But I will be. Jennifer sat in the chair beside my desk, the same chair Gregory had occupied an hour ago. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. I looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time since my return. She looked tired, older than she had 3 months ago. For what? For avoiding you. For not defending you when people talked. For being a coward. Her voice cracked slightly. "I knew you didn't do anything wrong. We all knew. But it was easier to keep my distance than to stand up for you." The honesty was unexpected, painful in its accuracy. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I watched you walk through these halls for 2 months like a ghost. Because I saw what people were doing to you, and I did nothing to stop it. And because I'm ashamed of myself." Jennifer wiped at her eyes. "You deserved better from us. From me. And I'm sorry." I didn't know what to say. Apologies were supposed to fix things, supposed to rebuild trust and repair damage. But Jennifer's apology couldn't undo 2 months of isolation, couldn't erase the damage that had been done by silence and avoidance. "Thank you," I said finally. It was all I could offer. Jennifer nodded and stood. "If you need someone to vouch for you to that reporter or anyone else, call me. I'll tell them the truth." After she left, I sat in the quiet of my empty classroom. One apology, one colleague willing to admit she had failed me. It wasn't enough, but it was something. The afternoon passed in the usual way. Classes, students, equations on the whiteboard. At 3:30, I gathered my things and walked to the parking lot. My car waited in its usual spot. I got in and sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. Around me, other teachers were leaving, walking in pairs and groups, talking and laughing, living lives that didn't include me anymore. I had been exonerated, but I hadn't been welcomed back. I had been cleared, but I hadn't been forgiven. The distinction mattered more than I had understood when the board had issued its public statement declaring my innocence. Innocence wasn't enough, not when the accusation itself had been enough to destroy my place in this community. I started the car and drove home through late afternoon traffic. At a stoplight, I looked at the dashboard clock. 4:15. My husband used to call me at this time every day when I was driving home, just to check in, just to hear my voice. He had been dead for 8 years, but I still noticed his absence most acutely in these small rituals. The phone call that would never come, the conversation that would never happen. The light changed. I drove through the intersection and toward my empty house. Inside, everything was exactly as I had left it that morning. I set my bag down in the kitchen, made tea I didn't drink, sat at the table, and opened my laptop. The email from Gregory was waiting for me. Subject line: course load discussion. I opened it and read the carefully worded request for me to reduce my teaching responsibilities next year. I closed the laptop without responding, stood up, walked to my office upstairs. The roses in the backyard were in full bloom now, red and pink and white, beautiful and indifferent to the chaos of human lives. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out the folder of newspaper clippings, read through them again. The accusations, the investigation, the vindication, the careful language that made it clear I had been suspected, even if I had been cleared. Then I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and began writing. Not a response to Gregory's email, not a defense of my teaching, a resignation letter. I wrote it carefully, professionally, without emotion or accusation. After 25 years of service to Ashford Academy, I have decided to resign my position effective at the end of this academic year. This decision is entirely my own and reflects my desire to pursue new opportunities. I read it over 3 times, changed 2 words, read it again. Then I folded it and placed it in an envelope, addressed it to Gregory Whitmore, set it on my desk where I would see it first thing in the morning. I didn't seal it, not yet. I wanted to sleep on the decision, wanted to make sure I wasn't acting out of anger or hurt or the accumulated weight of 2 months of isolation. But I knew I would send it. Knew that I couldn't continue teaching at a place where my presence made people uncomfortable, where parents questioned whether their children were safe in my classroom, where colleagues avoided me rather than defending me. I had been cleared of wrongdoing, but I hadn't been welcomed back, and that made staying impossible. I turned off the lights in my office and went downstairs, made dinner I barely tasted, cleaned up afterward, sat in the living room with a book I couldn't focus on. At 9 o'clock, Sarah called. "Hey, Mom, just checking in. How was today?" "It was fine," I said. Another lie. They were getting easier. School is school. Students are students. Nothing dramatic. "You sound tired." I am tired, but that's normal for this time of year. Finals are coming up. Everyone's stressed. Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Mom, are you sure you're okay? You can tell me if you're not." I wanted to tell her, wanted to explain how thoroughly my life at Ashford had been dismantled by accusations that had been proven false, how vindication hadn't restored what had been taken, how I was planning to resign from a job I had loved for 25 years because staying had become impossible. But I didn't say any of that. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Really. Just tired." "How are the kids?" We talked for 20 more minutes about her children and her job and the ordinary details of her life in Seattle. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet house and let myself feel the weight of what I was about to do. Resign, walk away. Let Diana Marshall's false accusations drive me from a career I had built with dedication and excellence. It felt like surrender, like admitting defeat, like proving everyone who had doubted me right. But staying felt worse. Staying meant enduring whispers and avoidance, and the constant pressure to make myself smaller so other people would feel comfortable. I went to bed early, lay awake in the dark, listened to the house settling around me. At some point, I must have fallen asleep because when I opened my eyes again, pale morning light was filtering through the curtains. I got up, showered, dressed, went to my office and picked up the envelope containing my resignation letter, sealed it, put it in my bag. The drive to Ashford was quiet. Empty roads, clear skies, the kind of morning that felt like a gift until you remembered it was just weather. I did not deliver the resignation letter. Not that morning, not that week. Instead, I carried it with me like a talisman, a reminder that I had a choice, that staying at Ashford was not my only option, even when it felt like the only life I knew. The letter stayed in my bag through faculty meetings where colleagues avoided my eyes, through parent-teacher conferences where mothers and fathers asked pointed questions about my teaching methods, through quiet lunches in my classroom while the faculty lounge hummed with conversations I was no longer part of. 3 weeks after I wrote the letter, the school year ended. Students took their final exams. Seniors graduated in a ceremony on the lawn where I sat with other faculty members and applauded names I had taught calculus to for years. Some of those students looked at me as they crossed the stage. Most did not. After the ceremony, parents clustered in groups on the grass. I walked to my car alone. No one stopped me to say goodbye or thank you or good luck. I had been erased as thoroughly as Diana, just more slowly and with better manners. Summer arrived. I should have felt relief. 3 months without the weight of scrutiny, without the careful neutrality of colleagues who no longer trusted me. But the house was too quiet. The days stretched out empty and purposeless. I tried to read, tried to work in the garden, tried to pretend I was enjoying the break. But I kept thinking about the resignation letter, about whether I should have sent it, about whether staying at Ashford was worth the cost of my dignity and peace of mind. In July, Sarah visited with her family. My grandchildren were 7 and 9, loud and energetic, and blissfully unaware of the scandal that had consumed my life for the past 4 months. We went to the beach, made dinners together, watched movies in the evening. For a week, I pretended to be fine, pretended the weight I carried was not crushing me slowly. But Sarah saw through it. She always had. On her last night, after the children were in bed, she sat with me in the kitchen over tea. "Mom," she said quietly, "you need to talk about what happened." "I'm fine," I told her. "The board cleared me. Diana is gone. It's over." "But it's not over," Sarah said. "I can see it in your face. The way you go quiet sometimes. The way you flinch when your phone rings. You're not fine. And you don't have to pretend with me." I set down my teacup. The words I had been holding back for months threatened to spill out. I did not know how to stop them anymore. "They treat me like I'm guilty," I said finally. My voice cracked. The board cleared me. The evidence proved Diana framed me. But it doesn't matter. Parents don't want their children in my classes. Colleagues avoid me in the halls. I walk through that school like a ghost, and no one sees me except to remember I was accused. Not that I was innocent. That I was accused. And that's what they'll always see. Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. "Then leave," she said. "You don't owe them anything. Not after what they put you through." "I've been there 25 years," I said. "It's my whole career. My whole life." "That's exactly why you should leave," Sarah said. "Because they don't deserve you. Because you deserve better than spending the rest of your career trying to prove something you've already proven. Because you're 51 years old and you could have 20 more years of teaching ahead of you. But not if you stay somewhere that's killing you slowly." Her words hit like a physical blow. Was that what I was doing? Letting Ashford kill me slowly? Letting the weight of other people's doubt crush the life out of me, piece by piece? After Sarah left, I pulled out the resignation letter, read it again. The carefully neutral language, the professional tone, the complete absence of anger or hurt or truth. I tore it up. Then I opened my laptop and wrote a new one. This one was different. This one told the truth. Dear members of the Ashford Academy Board of Directors, after 25 years of dedicated service to this institution, I am resigning my position effective immediately. This decision comes after months of careful consideration following my exoneration in the investigation into allegations of academic fraud. While the board cleared me of all wrongdoing, the impact of those false accusations has made it impossible for me to continue teaching at Ashford. Despite being proven innocent, I have faced ongoing isolation from colleagues, distrust from parents, and a fundamental erosion of the professional relationships that once made my work meaningful. I have been asked to reduce my course load to accommodate parents who remain uncomfortable with my presence. I have been avoided in faculty meetings and excluded from the informal networks that sustain a healthy academic community. The message is clear. While I may be innocent in the eyes of the board, I remain guilty in the eyes of the community. I refuse to spend the remainder of my career attempting to prove my innocence to people who have already decided I am suspect. I refuse to make myself smaller to accommodate the discomfort of others. I refuse to accept that being falsely accused is somehow equivalent to being guilty. Ashford Academy failed me, not just by believing false allegations, but by failing to restore my place in this community after those allegations were proven false. Vindication without restoration is meaningless. I hope future faculty members facing similar circumstances receive better treatment than I did. I hope the board learns that clearing someone's name is not enough if you don't also clear the path for their return. Sincerely, Dr. Margaret Sullivan. I read it 3 times, changed nothing, saved it, printed it, signed it, put it in an envelope. The next morning, I drove to Ashford and left it in Gregory Whitmore's mailbox. Then I went home and waited for the phone to ring. It did not ring that day, or the next. On the 3rd day, Gregory called. "Margaret," he said. His voice was tight, controlled. "I received your letter. I need you to reconsider." "There's nothing to reconsider," I told him. "I've made my decision." "But the school year starts in 4 weeks. We need time to find a replacement." "You should have thought of that before you asked me to reduce my course load to make parents comfortable. You should have thought of that before you let your faculty treat me like a pariah for something I didn't do." There was silence on the line. Then, "We made mistakes," Gregory said quietly. "I can admit that now, but walking away isn't the solution." "Walking away is the only solution," I said, "because staying means accepting that being falsely accused has permanently damaged my reputation. It means teaching in an environment where I'm tolerated but not trusted. It means spending every day proving myself to people who have already decided I'm suspect. I'm not willing to do that. Not anymore." "What do you want?" Gregory asked. His voice had shifted, harder now. "Do you want money? A formal apology? What would it take for you to stay?" "I want my reputation back," I said. "I want parents to trust me. I want colleagues to treat me like a peer instead of a liability. Can you give me that?" Silence. We both knew the answer. "No," he said finally. "I can't give you that." "Then there's nothing more to discuss," I told him. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from the exhilaration of finally saying what I had been thinking for months, from the relief of admitting that some things could not be fixed, that some damage was permanent, that walking away was not surrender, it was survival. The next week, I received a letter from the board. They accepted my resignation with regret. They thanked me for my years of service. They wished me well in my future endeavors. The language was careful, diplomatic, designed to protect the institution rather than acknowledge the harm they had caused. There was no apology, no admission that they had failed me, just polite, bureaucratic language that erased 25 years of dedication into 2 paragraphs of meaningless platitudes. I should have been angry, should have wanted to fight, should have wanted to force them to acknowledge what they had done. But I felt nothing except a strange lightness, as if a weight I had been carrying for months had finally been lifted. I was free from the obligation to prove myself, free from the burden of other people's doubt, free from the slow death of teaching in a place that no longer wanted me. The freedom felt terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. August passed in a blur. I cleaned out my office at Ashford, packed boxes of books and papers, and 25 years of accumulated teaching materials. No one helped me. No one stopped by to say goodbye or wish me luck. I carried the boxes to my car, alone, drove home, stacked them in the garage where they would sit untouched for months while I figured out what came next. The house felt different now, not empty, waiting, as if it understood that something fundamental had changed, that I had changed. In early September, when the school year started without me, I woke up at my usual time out of habit, made coffee, got dressed, then realized I had nowhere to go. No classroom waiting for me, no students expecting me, no equations to write on the whiteboard. The absence felt physical, like a limb I had lost and my body kept reaching for. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the wall, tried to imagine what my life would look like now, tried to feel something other than untethered and lost. My phone rang, unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. Dr. Sullivan? A woman's voice said, professional, confident. My name is Linda Harris. I'm the head of the mathematics department at Brookfield Community College. I heard about your situation at Ashford and I wanted to reach out. I went very still. How did you hear about my situation? Word travels in education circles, Linda said. Especially when someone with your reputation is treated badly by their institution. I was wondering if you might be interested in teaching for us. I don't understand, I said slowly. You know I was accused of helping students cheat? I know you were accused, Linda corrected. I also know you were completely exonerated. I know Diana Marshall was arrested and charged with fraud. I know Ashford failed you after clearing your name. And I know that losing a teacher of your caliber because of false accusations and institutional cowardice would be a tragedy. We would be lucky to have you at Brookfield, if you're interested. The offer caught me completely off guard. I had assumed my career was over, that no school would hire someone who had been accused of corruption, even if the accusations had been proven false, that the stain of suspicion would follow me forever. But here was someone offering me a second chance, a fresh start, a place where my reputation was not defined by Diana's lies. Are you serious? I asked. Completely serious, Linda said. We have an opening for advanced mathematics. Calculus, statistics, discrete math. The pay isn't what you made at Ashford, but the students are motivated and the administration actually supports its faculty. If you're interested, I'd love to set up a meeting. I'm interested, I said. The words came out before I could think about them, before I could list all the reasons this was a bad idea, before fear could talk me out of the first real opportunity I had been offered in months. Linda's voice warmed. Excellent. Are you free this Friday? We could meet for coffee and I could show you the campus. I'm free, I said. Friday works. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and let myself feel something I had not felt in months. Hope, small and fragile and terrifying, but real. Friday arrived bright and clear. I drove to Brookfield Community College 40 minutes outside Newton. The campus was nothing like Ashford. No manicured lawns or stone buildings or architectural grandeur, just practical brick structures and parking lots and students walking between classes in jeans and backpacks. It looked ordinary, accessible, real. Linda met me in the mathematics building. She was 50-ish with gray hair. She wore short and practical. She shook my hand firmly and smiled like she meant it. "Welcome to Brookfield," she said. "Let me show you around." We walked through the building. She showed me classrooms with whiteboards covered in equations, offices where faculty worked with doors open, a common room where students gathered for tutoring. Everything was smaller than Ashford, less polished, but there was energy here, a sense of purpose, of people actually teaching and learning rather than performing for wealthy parents. Linda introduced me to other faculty members. They shook my hand, asked about my background. No one mentioned the scandal. No one looked at me with suspicion or doubt. After the tour, we sat in Linda's office over coffee. "I want to be direct with you," Linda said. "I know what happened at Ashford. I know about the accusations and the investigation and the way they treated you after clearing your name. I want you to know that doesn't matter here. What matters is whether you can teach, whether you care about your students, whether you show up and do the work. The rest is noise. Can you do those things?" "I can do those things," I said. My voice was steady. "Then you have a job if you want it," Linda said. "We can start you in the spring semester. Give you time to prepare. The position is full-time, benefits included. Salary is $65,000. I know that's a pay cut from Ashford. It's fine," I said. Money was not why I taught. It never had been. "When can I start?" "January 15th, Linda said. "Spring semester begins the third week of January. That gives you 4 months to settle in, to prepare, to remember why you became a teacher in the first place." We shook hands. I left Brookfield feeling lighter than I had in months, lighter than I had felt since Gregory Whitmore called me into his office and told me I was being investigated. I had a job, a future, a place where I could teach without the weight of false accusations hanging over me. The drive home felt different. The road stretched out ahead, clear and open. I turned on the radio, sang along badly to songs I did not know the words to, felt something close to joy for the first time since March. When I got home, I called Sarah. She answered on the first ring. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," I said. "Everything's right. I got a job at a community college. They want me to start in January." Sarah screamed loud enough that I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "That's amazing. Tell me everything." I told her about Brookfield, about Linda, about the campus and the students, and the sense of possibility I had felt walking through those ordinary brick buildings. I told her about the salary and the benefits, and the way Linda had looked at me like I was a real person instead of a scandal. I told her I felt hopeful for the first time in months. "I'm so proud of you," Sarah said. Her voice was thick with emotion. "You could have given up. You could have let them destroy you. But you didn't. You fought back and you survived, and now you get to start over. You get to teach people who actually want to learn. You get to be yourself again." After we hung up, I sat in the kitchen and let myself cry. Not from sadness, from relief, from the overwhelming realization that I was going to be okay, that losing Ashford had not destroyed me, that there was life after false accusations and institutional betrayal, that I could rebuild. The resignation letter I had sent to Gregory Whitmore had felt like an ending, but maybe it was a beginning. Maybe walking away from Ashford was not surrender. Maybe it was the first step toward finding a place where I actually belonged. The months between September and January passed slowly. I prepared for my new position at Brookfield, read textbooks, developed lesson plans, researched teaching methods for community college students who often worked full-time jobs and juggled family responsibilities while taking classes. These were not the privileged children of Ashford. These were students who needed education to change their lives, to escape poverty, to build careers, to prove something to themselves and the world. Teaching them would be different, harder in some ways, more meaningful in others. In December, I received an email from Jennifer Walsh. The subject line said simply, "I am sorry." I opened it cautiously. "Margaret," the email began, "I know I apologized to you in person, but I wanted to put this in writing. I failed you. We all failed you. You deserved colleagues who stood up for you, who defended you, who refused to let false accusations define you. Instead, we were cowards. We protected ourselves and left you to face everything alone. I've thought about that every day since you left. I've thought about the kind of teacher I want to be, the kind of colleague I want to be, and I've realized I need to do better. You taught me that, not through anything you said, through the way you handled everything with grace and dignity even when we didn't deserve it. I hope you're doing well wherever you are. I hope you found a place that deserves you, because Ashford never did. With deep regret and respect, Jennifer." I read the email 3 times, then I closed my laptop without responding. Jennifer's apology was sincere, but it did not change anything. It did not undo the months of isolation. It did not restore what had been taken. Some damage was permanent. Some relationships could not be repaired. I appreciated the gesture, but I did not need her apology anymore. I had moved on. Christmas came and went. Sarah and her family visited again. We decorated the tree, made cookies, watched the grandchildren open presents. It felt normal, ordinary, like maybe I was learning how to live again, like maybe the weight I had carried for so long was finally lifting. On New Year's Eve, I stayed up late and watched the ball drop on television. When midnight came, I raised a glass of wine to the empty living room. To new beginnings, I said to no one, to second chances, to survival. January 15th arrived cold and bright. I woke early, made coffee, got dressed in clothes I had not worn since leaving Ashford, professional but not formal, comfortable but not casual, the clothes of someone who was a teacher but not trying too hard to prove it. I drove to Brookfield through morning traffic. The campus looked different in winter, stark and plain and beautiful in its ordinariness. I parked in the faculty lot, walked to the mathematics building, found my office. It was small, one window, a desk and chair and empty bookshelves waiting to be filled. I set down my bag and looked around. This was mine now. This space, this opportunity, this chance to teach without the weight of suspicion or doubt. I walked to my classroom 10 minutes before the first class started. The room was already filling with students. They looked tired. Many of them wore uniforms from jobs they had come from or would go to after class. Some had gray in their hair. Some had children in the childcare center across campus. These were not the children of Ashford. These were adults fighting for something better. And I was going to help them get it. "Good morning," I said. "I'm Dr. Sullivan. Welcome to Calculus 1. For the next 16 weeks, we're going to work together to understand one of the most beautiful and powerful tools in mathematics. Some of you are nervous. Some of you think you can't do this. I'm here to tell you that you can. Mathematics isn't about being smart. It's about being persistent, about showing up, about refusing to give up when things get hard. And I'm going to be here with you every step of the way. The students looked at me with a mixture of hope and skepticism. I understood both feelings. I had felt them myself over the past 10 months. Hope that things could get better. Skepticism that they actually would. But I was here, standing in front of a classroom again, teaching, doing the work I loved. And that was enough. For now, that was enough. I picked up a piece of chalk and turned to the whiteboard. "Let's begin," I said. And we did. 6 months passed before I realized I had stopped checking the news about Ashford, stopped wondering what my former colleagues thought of me, stopped carrying the weight of their judgment like a stone in my chest. I was teaching calculus to students who actually wanted to learn, who showed up tired from night shifts and asked questions until they understood, who treated mathematics not as a gateway to elite universities, but as a tool for building better lives. It was harder work than Ashford had ever been, and infinitely more rewarding. My office at Brookfield filled slowly with the artifacts of my new life. Student papers covered in red ink and encouraging comments. A coffee mug from the mathematics department that said, "Calculus, it's how we derive meaning." Photos of my grandchildren on the desk. Books I was reading not because they would impress anyone, but because I wanted to understand how to teach students whose lives looked nothing like the privileged children I had spent 25 years preparing for Ivy League schools. This space felt mine in a way my office at Ashford never had. No performance required, no pretense maintained, just work. In late spring, I received an email from Robert Chen. The subject line said, "Thank you." I stared at it for several minutes before opening it. "Dr. Sullivan," he wrote, "I hope this email finds you well. Tyler graduated from Princeton last month. He's going to medical school at Stanford in the fall. He asked me to tell you something. He was too ashamed to tell you himself. Your class was the only one at Ashford where he actually learned mathematics instead of memorizing formulas. When he got to Princeton, he struggled in advanced courses because so many of his classmates had been taught by teachers like you, teachers who cared about understanding rather than test scores. He told me he wishes he had come forward sooner about Diana Marshall. He wishes he had been braver. He wishes he had protected you the way you always protected your students. I wish that too. I failed you, Dr. Sullivan. The entire board failed you. We believed accusations without sufficient evidence. We cleared your name, but did nothing to restore your reputation. We let you walk away from Ashford because it was easier than confronting the parents who doubted you or the colleagues who avoided you. That was wrong. I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that Tyler is going to be a doctor. And part of the reason he'll be a good doctor is because you taught him to think critically, to question assumptions, to prove things rather than accept them. Thank you for that. I hope you're teaching somewhere that deserves you. Sincerely, Robert Chen. I read the email twice. Then I saved it in a folder labeled Ashford and closed my laptop. Robert's apology was sincere. Tyler's gratitude was real, but they could not give me back the year I had lost, could not undo the damage of those months when I walked through Ashford's halls, invisible and suspect, could not restore the professional relationships that had been destroyed by accusation and silence. Some things could not be fixed with apologies. Some wounds healed, but left scars. I understood that now. Accepted it. The knowledge did not make me bitter. It made me careful, protective of the new life I was building, determined not to take for granted the colleagues who treated me with respect and the students who showed up wanting to learn. In June, Linda Harris asked me to take on additional responsibilities. "We're expanding our mathematics program," she said during a meeting in her office. "We want to offer more advanced courses, differential equations, linear algebra, real analysis. I know you could teach any of them. I also know I'm asking you to take on extra work, but I wouldn't ask if I didn't think you were the right person. What do you think?" "I think I'd like to teach real analysis," I said. It had been my favorite subject in graduate school. The beauty of proof, the elegance of logical structures, the certainty of mathematical truth. I had not taught it in years. The idea of returning to it felt like coming home. Linda smiled. "Real analysis it is. We'll add it to the fall schedule." "Thank you, Margaret. You've been everything I hoped you would be when I called you last year." "That means more than you know," I told her, and I meant it. Linda had given me a second chance when no one else would, had treated me like a colleague rather than a liability, had judged me on my teaching rather than the accusations that had destroyed my previous career. I would not forget that, would not take it for granted, would spend the rest of my time at Brookfield earning the trust she had placed in me. Summer arrived. I spent it preparing for fall courses and working in the garden my husband had planted years ago. The roses he had chosen bloomed red and pink and white. I tended them carefully, pruned dead branches, fertilized the soil, watched them thrive despite my neglect during the year when I had been too consumed by survival to think about flowers. They had endured. So had I. The parallel was not lost on me. In July, Sarah visited again with her family. We spent a week at the beach, built sandcastles with the grandchildren, ate ice cream that melted faster than we could lick it, talked about ordinary things that felt extraordinary, because I had almost lost the ability to enjoy them. On the last night of their visit, Sarah and I sat on the back porch after the children were asleep. The roses glowed in the fading light. Fireflies drifted across the yard. Everything felt peaceful in a way I had not experienced in over a year. "You look different," Sarah said quietly. "Happier, lighter." "I feel different," I told her. "Like I'm not carrying something heavy anymore." She smiled. "I'm glad. I was worried about you for a long time. I thought maybe you wouldn't recover from what Ashford did to you." "I almost didn't recover," I admitted. There were days I thought about giving up, about walking away from teaching entirely, about letting Diana's lies define the rest of my life. But then what? Then she wins. Then you let someone else's cruelty destroy something you love. I couldn't let that happen. Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, Mom, for fighting back, for surviving, for finding a place where you can teach without all that weight. You deserve this." "Thank you," I said. My voice caught slightly. I did not know if I believed I deserved it, but I was learning to accept it, learning to build a life that was not defined by what had been taken from me, learning to be more than a victim of false accusations, learning to be myself again. After Sarah and her family left, the house felt empty in a different way. Not lonely, just quiet, waiting. I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. An email from Jennifer Walsh waited in my inbox. Subject line: Ashford News. I hesitated before opening it. Did I want to know what was happening at Ashford? Did I care? But curiosity won. I clicked. Margaret, Jennifer wrote. I debated sending this, but decided you should know. Gregory Whitmore is leaving Ashford. The board asked him to resign after several faculty members complained about how he handled your situation. Apparently, there was an internal review. The conclusion was that he failed to protect you after clearing your name, that he prioritized donor relationships over faculty welfare, that he allowed a toxic culture to persist where being accused was treated the same as being guilty. He's gone. The new headmaster is someone from outside Ashford, someone who has promised to reform how the school handles investigations and supports faculty through difficult situations. It's too late for you. I know that. But maybe it will help future teachers who face what you faced. I thought you should know that your resignation letter made a difference, that the board couldn't ignore what you wrote, that your honesty forced them to confront their failures. You changed things here, Margaret. Even though you're gone, even though they drove you away, you made them better. I hope that brings you some measure of peace. Take care, Jennifer. I closed the email and sat very still. Gregory was gone. Ashford was changing. My resignation letter had forced the board to acknowledge their failures. It should have felt like vindication, like justice, like proof that speaking truth to power mattered. But mostly I felt tired. Tired of Ashford. Tired of thinking about what had been done to me there. Tired of measuring my current happiness against my past suffering. I opened a reply to Jennifer. Thank you for letting me know, I wrote. I hope the changes help future faculty members. I hope no one else has to go through what I went through. But I'm not looking for vindication from Ashford anymore. I've moved on. I'm teaching students who want to learn, working with colleagues who respect me, building a life that's not defined by what was taken from me. That's enough. I wish you well, Jennifer. Take care of yourself. Margaret. I sent the email and printed a copy, along with Robert's earlier message. I took them upstairs to my office and pulled out the folder labeled Ashford. Inside were newspaper clippings and screenshots, the accumulated evidence of a year that had nearly destroyed me. I carried the folder downstairs to the fireplace, lit a fire even though it was summer and the evening was warm, placed each piece of paper in the flames one by one, watched them curl and blacken and disappear into ash. The accusations, the investigation, the vindication that had not restored what was taken, the resignation letter that had changed Ashford, but could not change what had happened to me. All of it burning, all of it reduced to nothing. When the last piece of paper had burned, I sat back and watched the flames die down. I felt lighter, freer, unburdened by the need to remember or understand or make sense of what had been done to me. It was over, truly over. Not because Ashford had apologized or changed or acknowledged their failures, but because I had decided it was over, because I had chosen to stop carrying it. In August, I prepared for the fall semester, developed lesson plans for real analysis. The course would be small, maybe 10 students, advanced mathematics majors, and a few brave engineers. I would teach them about limits and continuity and the rigorous foundations of calculus, would show them how to construct proofs that could not be disputed, how to build arguments that withstood scrutiny, how to find truth in abstraction. The work felt important, meaningful, like I was teaching them something that mattered beyond test scores and college admissions, teaching them how to think, how to question, how to prove what could not be denied. The first day of classes arrived in late August. I walked into the real analysis classroom 15 minutes early, set up my materials, wrote the course title on the whiteboard: Introduction to Real Analysis. The students filed in slowly. Most of them looked nervous. Real analysis had a reputation for being difficult, abstract, the course where mathematics students discovered whether they actually loved mathematics or just loved getting right answers. I waited until everyone was seated. Then I introduced myself. Good morning. I'm Dr. Sullivan. This is Introduction to Real Analysis. For the next 16 weeks, we're going to study the foundations of calculus. We're going to prove things you've taken for granted. Question assumptions you've accepted. Build rigorous arguments that cannot be disputed. This course will be hard. You will struggle. You will doubt yourselves, but you will also discover something important. You will discover that mathematics isn't about memorizing formulas or getting right answers. It's about constructing truth, about proving what cannot be denied, about building logical structures that withstand any scrutiny. One student raised her hand, a young woman in the front row. Dr. Sullivan, she said. Her voice was tentative. Why does that matter? Why do we need to prove things we already know are true? I smiled, because knowing something is true isn't the same as proving it's true. Because accepting something on faith isn't the same as understanding why it must be true. Because in mathematics, we don't trust. We verify. We build arguments so rigorous that no one can dispute them. Not because they agree with us, but because the logic is undeniable. That's what this course will teach you: how to construct undeniable truth. The student nodded slowly. I could see her turning the idea over in her mind. The other students were watching me with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. I picked up a piece of chalk and turned to the whiteboard. Let's begin, I said. And we did. The semester unfolded in the rhythm I had learned over 25 years of teaching: lectures and office hours, and grading and preparation. But something was different now. I was not performing for wealthy parents or proving myself to skeptical colleagues. I was teaching students who wanted to learn, who showed up and asked questions and worked through problems until they understood, who treated education as something precious rather than something purchased. My office filled with students during office hours. They came with questions about proofs and concepts and the philosophy of mathematics. We talked about limits and continuity and the nature of infinity. We argued about whether mathematics was discovered or invented, whether truth existed independently of human minds or was constructed through logical systems. The conversations were messy and wonderful, and exactly what teaching was supposed to be. In October, Linda stopped by my office. You look happy, she said. I am happy, I told her. This is the best teaching I've done in years, maybe ever. Linda smiled. I'm glad. You deserve that. You deserve to teach without all the baggage you carried from Ashford. I wanted to tell you something. We're starting a mentorship program for faculty who are new to community college teaching. People who come from research universities or elite institutions and don't understand how to teach students whose lives are complicated. I'd like you to lead it, to help them understand what you've learned this year. What makes teaching here different? What makes it matter? I'd be honored, I said. And I meant it. I had learned something important at Brookfield, had learned that teaching was not about prestige or test scores or college acceptances. It was about meeting students where they were, about helping them build skills and confidence and understanding, about treating education as a right rather than a privilege. I wanted to help other faculty learn that too. Wanted to share what I had discovered. Wanted to make sure that teachers who came to Brookfield understood what made this place special. The mentorship program launched in November. 6 faculty members joined. Most of them had come from elite institutions where teaching was secondary to research, where students arrived prepared and motivated and wealthy. They struggled at first with students who missed classes because of work conflicts, who turned in late assignments because of family emergencies, who needed extra help and patience and understanding. I taught them what Linda had taught me, that teaching was about more than delivering content. It was about building relationships, about understanding your students' lives, about creating space for people to learn even when their circumstances were difficult. One professor told me she had almost quit. I didn't understand why my students weren't performing, she said. I thought maybe I was a bad teacher, but you helped me see that I was teaching them the way I was taught, the way that works for privileged students with time and resources, not the way that works for students who are fighting to be here. Now, I structure my courses differently, with more flexibility, more support, more understanding, and my students are thriving. Thank you for that. You're welcome, I told her. But I didn't teach you anything you didn't already know. I just helped you remember why you became a teacher in the first place. She smiled. Maybe that's the most important thing. Remembering why we do this. Remembering that teaching isn't about us, it's about them. December arrived cold and bright. Final exams approached. My real analysis students were nervous. The final would be comprehensive. Proofs they had to construct from scratch. Theorems they had to prove without notes or hints. Pure, mathematical reasoning. I spent the week before finals holding extra office hours. Students came with questions and fears and doubts. I worked with them one by one, showed them how to break down complex proofs into manageable steps, how to identify what they knew and what they needed to prove, how to construct arguments that could not be disputed. You can do this, I told each of them. You've done it all semester. The final is just one more proof, one more chance to show what you understand. The day of the final exam, I arrived early, set up the classroom, laid out blank paper and pencils, wrote the exam problems on the whiteboard. The students filed in looking tense. I stood at the front of the room. You have 3 hours, I said. The problems are on the board. Show your work. Explain your reasoning. Construct proofs that are clear and rigorous. Remember what you've learned this semester. Mathematics isn't about being smart. It's about being persistent, about refusing to give up when things get hard. You have all the tools you need. Trust yourselves. They began, the room filled with the sound of pencils on paper. I watched them work, saw them struggle and think and build arguments piece by piece, saw them construct truth through logic and reasoning. It was beautiful, the most beautiful thing I had seen in years. When the 3 hours ended, they turned in their exams. Some looked confident, others looked defeated. I collected the papers and told them I would have grades by the end of the week. After they left, I sat in the empty classroom and looked at the stack of exams. This was why I taught. Not for the easy students who arrived prepared and motivated, for the ones who struggled, who doubted themselves, who needed someone to believe in them before they could believe in themselves. I spent the weekend grading, read each proof carefully, marked mistakes gently, wrote encouraging comments even on papers that had failed, calculated grades. The results were better than I expected. 8 out of 10 students passed. 3 of them earned A's. One student who had struggled all semester had written a perfect final proof. clear and rigorous and undeniable. I wrote, "Excellent work," across the top of her paper. "You have mastered this material. I'm proud of you." When I returned the graded exams, that student stayed after class. "Dr. Sullivan," she said. Her voice was thick with emotion. "I've never passed a math class this hard before. I thought I was going to fail, but you kept telling me I could do it. And I started to believe you. Thank you for not giving up on me." "I never thought about giving up on you," I told her. "You showed up. You asked questions. You worked hard. That's all anyone can ask." She wiped at her eyes. "I'm going to graduate school next year. I want to study mathematics. I want to teach like you do. Teach students who think they can't do it. Show them they're wrong." My throat tightened. That would make me very happy. She smiled and left. I sat alone in the classroom and let myself feel the weight of that moment. This was what teaching was supposed to be. Helping someone discover abilities they did not know they had. Watching them transform. Knowing you had played some small part in that transformation. The semester ended. The campus emptied as students went home for winter break. I cleaned out my office, packed up papers and books, prepared for next semester. Walking to my car on the last day, I passed Linda in the hallway. "Heading out?" she asked. "Heading out," I confirmed. "See you in January." "Margaret," she said. I stopped and turned. "I wanted to tell you something. When I called you last year, I took a risk. You were coming from a scandal, from accusations and investigations and professional destruction. Some people told me hiring you was a mistake, that you might bring problems, that your reputation might damage the college. But I looked at your teaching record, your publications, the letters from students, and I saw someone who cared about teaching, who cared about students, who had been destroyed by a system that valued money over truth. I knew you deserved a second chance. I'm glad I took that risk. You've been everything I hoped and more. Thank you for that." "Thank you for believing in me," I said. My voice was unsteady. "Thank you for seeing past the accusations. Thank you for giving me a place where I could teach without proving myself every day. You saved my life, Linda. I mean that. You saved my life." We stood in the empty hallway for a moment. Then Linda smiled. "Go home, Margaret. Enjoy your break. I'll see you in January." I drove home through late afternoon traffic. The sky was gray with coming snow. The roads were quiet. Everything felt peaceful, complete. I had survived the worst year of my life, had lost a career and rebuilt it, had been destroyed and restored, had learned that vindication without restoration was meaningless, but that restoration without vindication was possible, that sometimes the only way forward was to walk away, to start over, to build something new. When I got home, I made tea, sat at the kitchen table, looked out at the backyard where roses would bloom again in spring. My husband had planted them, knowing they would outlast him. He had been right. They had outlasted him. They had outlasted my career at Ashford. They would outlast this version of me too, the version who had been accused and investigated and exonerated, the version who had walked through halls like a ghost, the version who had learned that being proven innocent was not the same as being welcomed back. That woman was gone now, replaced by someone harder, more careful, less trusting, but also stronger, more resilient, more certain of her own worth. I finished my tea and went upstairs to my office, pulled out a notebook, started planning courses for spring semester. Real analysis again, calculus, a new course on probability theory. The work felt good. purposeful. Mine. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. How did finals go? Great, I typed back. Students did well. One of them is going to graduate school. That's wonderful, Sarah replied. I'm so proud of you, Mom, for rebuilding, for not giving up, for finding a place where you can teach without all that weight. You deserve this happiness. I smiled at the screen. Maybe I did deserve it. Maybe surviving what I had survived earned me the right to happiness. Maybe walking away from Ashford and finding Brookfield was not surrender, but wisdom. Maybe learning to let go of vindication was the only way to find peace. I set down my phone and looked out the window. Snow was beginning to fall, light and quiet and beautiful, covering everything in white, erasing the marks of the past, making the world new again. I thought about Diana Marshall, about where she was now, whether she regretted what she had done, whether she understood the damage she had caused. I hoped she did, hoped she carried the weight of it, but I also hoped she had found some way to rebuild, to learn from her mistakes, to become someone better than the person who had destroyed my career to advance her own. Because holding on to anger would not serve me, would not change what had happened, would only keep me tied to a past I was trying to leave behind. I chose to let it go, chose to forgive, not because she deserved it, but because I deserved peace. Outside, the snow continued to fall. Inside, I was warm, safe, home. I had a career I loved, students who wanted to learn, colleagues who respected me, a daughter who believed in me, grandchildren who made me laugh, roses that would bloom in spring, a life that was mine. Not defined by what had been taken, but by what I had built in its place. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. I closed the notebook and stood, turned off the lights in my office, went downstairs, made dinner for one, ate it slowly, washed the dishes, sat in the living room with a book, read until I was tired, went to bed, slept peacefully for the first time in over a year, dreamed of equations on whiteboards and students who asked questions, and spring roses blooming red and pink and white. Dreamed of a future that was not haunted by false accusations or destroyed careers or the weight of other people's doubt. Dreamed of teaching, just teaching, the way it was always supposed to be. When I woke the next morning, snow covered the ground. The world looked clean, new, full of possibility. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, started writing a new lesson plan for spring semester. The first day of real analysis, what I would say, how I would welcome my students, how I would teach them that mathematics was about more than formulas and answers. It was about constructing truth, about building arguments that could not be disputed, about proving what could not be denied. I worked for hours, lost in the rhythm of creation, building something meaningful, something mine. When I finally looked up, the sun was high in the sky, the snow was melting, spring would come again. It always did. And I would be here, teaching, living, surviving, thriving, not in spite of what had happened to me, but because of it. Because I had learned that sometimes the only way to win is to walk away, to refuse to play a rigged game, to build something new on your own terms. That was what I had done. That was what I would keep doing, for as long as I could teach, for as long as students needed me, for as long as I remembered why I had become a teacher in the first place. Not for prestige or money or elite institutions, for the work itself, for the moment when a student understood something they thought they could never understand, for the transformation that happened when someone discovered their own abilities, for the privilege of helping people become who they were meant to be. That was teaching. That was enough. That was everything.